Hello everyone and welcome back to the Little Quilter. Today we're going to be working on not one but two quilts. I have got both of the backings loaded. And how did all of this come about, you may be asking yourself, and why are you doing two quilts on your longarm machine? And I have the answers for you. It all started with this fabric right here. So this Bluey fabric was fabric that my daughter saw when we went to pick up the fabric for the Harry Potter quilt. If you guys haven't watched about that quilt, I'll link it for you, but you can check it out. This one though, she found this fabric and just really wanted it, and as any good quilter, I definitely encourage her interest in sewing and fabric and said, sure, we can get it, let's pick out a backing. And we did. We went for this, let me show you here. So we went for the Mickey Mouse flannel. I did direct her towards flannel just because I wanted something soft for her, and that's what she picked out. I think it looks great. I have on the back of this, you can't see it, but I have embroidered her name on the back of it and the year because I plan on giving it to her for Christmas as a Christmas quilt. And so I was going to do this quilt. I have a pantograph picked out because, again, I want the Bluey fabric to be the star of the show and not necessarily my intricate quilting, as well as this quilt is going to be a super easy quilt. So there is absolutely no sewing involved in this. I basically got 2 feet of fabric by width of fabric, and that's all. I'm going to just put some quilt batting between them, and then I'm going to quilt them. So it's going to come together really fast. The main reason I went with 2 feet of fabric rather than like 1 or a smaller amount is that she's just getting taller. And so she still really enjoys her baby blankets, but she is growing out of them in length and her feet stick out, which bother her. So this is my fix for that, and hopefully she'll like it. I went to put this on my long arm and I thought, I'm going to waste so much batting because I'm only doing a width of fabric size quilt. And so I decided I had this beautiful quilt right here. I'll show you a little more of it. So this beautiful quilt was pieced by my mother, and she pieced it a while ago for my daughter and then just basically gave it to me. I think she had intentions of doing all of the quilting, but it just became either too much for her or she just was done. She does have a very old sewing machine, and not that you can't do a quilt on an older sewing machine. It just was something that she knew I enjoyed quilting, and so she just gave it to me to finish it. So I thought, what a wonderful chance to do this, and serendipitously, I had this beautiful pink fabric, which I think goes really well with this. So this pink minky fabric that was actually, I thought, almost spot on. I'll show you what I had to do to this quilt backing to make it exactly the same, but it was so close that I thought this is perfect. So I can load both of them onto the machine and just basically glide back and forth between them. Okay, so as you can see here, I have got 2 quilt backings loaded. This one with the Mickey Mouse and this one with the really super pink minky background. I had to repin this one because what I did was pull it up a little bit and pin. I think it's a little hard to see here, but it's kind of flipped on itself just a smidge because it was that much longer than the pink one. So this one was really tight and this one was kind of that looseness. So to try and get them at that same level of tightness so that as we move it down, we'll be okay with our quilting tension, I redid it. So that's why these are on the top and these are on the bottom. Now, you may be asking yourself, what thread am I going to use for this? And originally, when I was just doing this quilt right here, I was going to use this gray blue glide thread. It's called light gray, but I thought it would blend really well with this bluey fabric right here. However, once I decided to do this quilt, I just didn't think that this was going to work for it. There's just so many other colors in this quilt that I just didn't want to use this gray. So what I decided to do was to use pink. So I have already used this cotton candy pink color for the red and white sampler quilt, and I thought what another wonderful place to use it, and that it will go beautifully with all of the pinks in this quilt, but it will also go well with this one. And I actually have embroidered her name in a beautiful pink thread on this quilt. So what I thought I would do would just be to use this pink thread and be able to go back and forth between these without having to change my thread, because you guys know that I hate changing my thread. So I'm going to finish setting this up. Alright, I've got to say I am excited to get started on this free motion. It's been a moment since I've been in front of the quilt, and honestly the design that I'm doing on the Bluey quilt is just not going my favorite. I think doing concentric circles or anything that's very consistent spacing like this design is, in a more of a free motion, I'm not a machine, is just a little bit harder to do, and maybe something that I should tackle later on in my quilting career. But at the same time, I think if you don't practice it, you're not going to get better. But it's nice to take a break from that and be able to work on this beautiful block right here, or should I say quilt right here. So I'm going to be doing every single strip here differently. So let's go ahead and jump into that, because I think this is going to be some fun. right, everybody, that is this first row of this quilt completed and the first row of the Bluey quilt completed as well. I hope that you guys have enjoyed this. I hope you have enjoyed the foray back into free motion, long arm quilting and roller work. I'm happy to be back at the front of the quilt, and definitely makes me want to get on to another full free motion quilt. But for now, I will continue with the taste, and I am enjoying using different designs on this. So you may notice that some of these are repeats from earlier quilts this year, and just pulling from all sorts of patterns that I have done and that I know, and kind of putting them into this. It's kind of an interesting idea, sort of coming towards the end of the year, of doing a quilt like this, a strip quilt with maybe like a bunch of different fabric that you've already used, so some scrap fabrics, and then putting on those designs, the quilting designs that you've used throughout the year. I think that would look really, really cool. And I'm loving that everything is not perfect in this quilt. I'm loving all of it. So I hope that you guys are as well. I look forward to talking with you again, and have a wonderful day. Thanks.